Hey everyone, welcome to Sidetrack Adventures. This is Steve. Right now I'm in Holtville, California on an extremely windy day, standing on old Highway 80. When Interstate 8 was built just a few miles south of here, Holtville, like a lot of other towns in the area, saw traffic through the town disappear almost overnight. But at least you can still find Holtville on the map. If you ask most people, even people who live in Southern California, to point to Dixieland, California on the map, they'll be surprised to learn there's a Dixieland, California. But that brings us to today's video, because today we're going to travel old Highway 80 through California's Utah Desert and explore its abandoned and forgotten legacy. Highway 80 was one of America's first numbered highways and was the country's first all-weather coast-to-coast highway. It originally stretched from Savanah, Georgia in the east to San Diego, California in the west, covering 2,725 miles. Through California, the highway largely followed the route of the Old Spanish Trail, the Bankhead Highway, and the Dixie Overland Highway. By the 1940s, Highway 80 was bringing more people into California than its more famous cousin, Route 66 was. But like Route 66, there was a lot of desert to be crossed before getting to the state's population centers. While Highway 80 was bypassed by Interstate 8 in the 1960s, most of the old road between Holtville and the mountains east of San Diego is still drivable, and that's the section we'll be exploring today. We are starting the drive today in Holtville, which is one of the oldest towns in the area, and is extremely windy today. The founder of the town was a man named W.F. Holt, who after buying large amounts of stock in the Imperial Water Companies, started a town that he named after himself, Holton, in 1903. Since the name was similar to the already existing Colton, California, the post office made them change the name to Holtville. With the highway being bypassed and the railroad not operating anymore, these days the economy of the town is almost all agriculture. Holt Park, which is right on what was once Highway 80, is a pretty cool spot to stop in Holtville, as there's a few interesting things to see here. My favorite thing here is this old Auto Club milepost replica. Originally, these would have been in the middle of the road. Holtville City Hall is right in the middle of the park, too. This pyramid is a time capsule. It's supposed to be opened on July 4th, 2026. This small veterans memorial lists the name of every Holtville citizen who's been killed in combat since the town's inception. This is probably some of the last green grass we'll see for a while. There's always talk about restoring the railroad, but at this point it's in such bad condition, I can't see it happening anytime soon. A friend of W.F. Holt named C.A. Barker bought land in this area, and as the railroad was going to come through here, they wanted to build a station on Barker's land. Taking a page from his friend Holt, he named the station after himself, Barker. In 1905, a real estate company changed the name to El Centro. El Centro is the Imperial County seat and the second largest city in the United States below sea level, with Indio being the largest. The downtown area hasn't changed a lot over the years. I've always thought that if a movie needed a place to film that looked like it was still in the 1940s or 50s, downtown El Centro is a good place. Some of the buildings still even have some cool neon on them. Because it can get so hot here, All the sidewalks through downtown were built to be covered. And right outside of the downtown shopping area, we have a horse trough right here on the street. And why is there a horse trough here? Because in the early 1920s, people would ride their horse to the courthouse. The Imperial County Courthouse was built in 1924. There has been talk of tearing this courthouse down, because why have a cool historic building like this when you can have one of these ugly buildings? Now that we're leaving El Centro, we're getting to what I think is the most interesting part of the drive. Though travelers in the 1920s probably didn't like it so much. There will be a few settlements, but they'll be pretty small. This sign is welcoming us to historic Seeley. The original town was a few miles south of here and called Silsbee, but it was destroyed in 1905 during the flooding that created the Salton Sea. This current town was founded in 1911. Here's what remains of the Seeley Club. During World War II, there was an army camp here in Seeley. And I should mention, this is the real Seeley Club. Don't be fooled by any imposter Seeley clubs out there. Here's an abandoned drive-through place, but I'm not sure what the business was. There is still an open gas station and mini-mart in the town. About 2,000 people or so live in Seeley, so this is far from a ghost town. There's also a naval airfield near here too. This is the new river in front of us. There used to be a bridge that crosses it, but now the road just goes through it. We are above the old road right now. Here and there it kind of peeks through the dirt. Here's some of the old yellow lines from the road. The new river flows north from Mexico, and it was named in 1849 when the dry riverbed suddenly flooded due to an overflow from the Colorado River. This is one of the rivers that helped create the Salton Sea when a canal levee on the Colorado was breached. Nowadays, the river is mainly fed by agricultural runoff. It's said to be super polluted when it hits the border, but it's listed as safe by the time it hits the Salton Sea. I don't know, but I'm not chancing it by eating any fish out of it or swimming in it anytime soon, that's for sure. And you can see up ahead where the bridge once was. Hopefully the wind blows some of these clouds away, even though I know right now these dark clouds kind of add to the atmosphere. So here's the new river and the current Highway 80 going through it. And just to the south is the railroad bridge crossing the new river. The rest of the way, the highway follows the path of the old San Diego and Arizona Railway. And now we are crossing the new river. We've reached Dixieland, which is a town name you wouldn't expect to find in California. The early developers sold the area on being a great place to grow cotton, and that's why they chose the name. There was a post office here until 1935, but there isn't much here now. Well, there's something here, but that's down the road just a bit. There certainly isn't any cotton. Had to laugh because even this clearly abandoned and destroyed building has still been getting its junk mail. Here's some more of what's left of Dixieland. All this cracked and dried ground here. I'm not sure if they really thought this was a good place for cotton, or if they were just trying to swindle people. It gets to like 120 degrees out here, and there's hardly any humidity at all. I can't really tell if this was a house or a business. Has that giant industrial vent on the top. It looks like there'd been a fire set in here at some point, people burning trash. There's another abandoned shed or something over here. There are a few farms out here, and this is an irrigation canal that the railroad is crossing. It also looks like people have decided this is a great place to dump their old campers. If you're interested in buying property out here, apparently there's some for sale. But you may not like all of your neighbors. It looks like someone abandoned a prefabricated home out here, and they didn't even bother to take it off the trailer. They just left it out here, home, trailer, and all. So just a little ways past Dixieland, there is this row of bushes, and you may be wondering what's hiding behind them. Well, when you look at the satellite view on Google, it's absolutely ridiculous. There are 2 large artificial lakes for water skiing in the desert. This is called Imperial Lakes. Here's a spot where we can see through the bushes. These were built in the 1990s before the current water issues in the state, but it's wild that these exist while farmers in the area have to cut their water usage. We've now left all the agricultural areas behind and have entered the Utah Desert. We are now approaching Plaster City, which isn't a city at all. It's a large plant that's on both sides of the highway. Plaster City started in the 1920s as a processing plant for gypsum that was mined in the Fish Mountains to the north. It was built here for access to the railway line that once went through. Nowadays, the plant here manufactures drywall. There was once a service station and cafe here, but those died long ago. We just came across a C marker. California used these from 1914 to 1934 to mark the right-of-way for roads. The rail sticking out of the ground next to it is so that off-roaders don't accidentally run into it. It isn't visible now, but out towards that rainbow is Superstition Mountain. It's an old volcano that got its name because natives thought it was inhabited by evil spirits. Here's the current alignment of the highway, but between here and the railroad tracks, we have what remains of the old alignment of the highway in use from 1916 to 1932. This old road is only 15 feet wide, and unlike modern concrete roads, this isn't segmented at all. I mean, aside from the cracks that have shown up over the years. They didn't do concrete in sections back then. They just kept laying it until they ran out, or it was time to finish for the night. The old road isn't really drivable. It disappears now and again, and parts of it aren't in the best condition. But I think it still looks pretty good for being over 100 years old, with no maintenance for at least 90 years. So this bridge is out. Luckily it's dry and we're just going to drive around it, but while we're stopped we might as well take a look at it and see if we could tell why the bridge is out. I know it doesn't look like it from up here, but this is a wooden bridge. Normally they would try to make highway bridges out of a more permanent material, but in the deserts they'd use wood on wash crossings a lot of times. The reason being is they knew the bridges could get damaged in a flash flood, no matter what material they were built out of, so they just used wood to make it cheaper to repair. And this bridge was built in the 1940s. I believe before that they just drove across the wash. Looks like there's a bit of a drop here, but nothing too bad. I'm not sure it's the best idea to walk out onto a bridge that's out, but this thing's been here over 80 years. I'm sure it's going to last another day. You can see some of the wood below us. We'll take a look at it from below in just a minute. We have to drive around it anyways. So far I don't see any obvious reason why the bridge is out. There has to be something underneath. You can take a look how big this wash is. Just imagine the amount of water that comes through here at times. And here's a look at the bridge from below. I still don't see any obvious damage, but there's a reason they shut it down. Hopefully they can get it repaired in the future, but there's so little traffic on this road, I doubt it's a priority. We just came across this guy out here. We are coming up to Coyote Wells, or the 1916 version of Coyote Wells anyway. It was moved here when the highway was rerouted. In 1857, a mail line associate named Jason Mason saw a coyote drinking water that was hidden by mesquite trees, hence the name. There was once a station on the San Diego and Arizona Railway here too, but it's long gone. We've reached the town of Ocotillo, where the current Highway 80 ends, but we aren't quite to where we're stopping yet. Ocotillo was the last town before hitting the mountains, which was a pretty steep and winding route that gave early cars a lot of trouble, or the first town before going through the desert we just came through, depending on which way you were traveling. There is a gas station and a really good mini-mart in town, and also the Imperial Valley Desert Museum, which is worth a visit. But along Highway 80, there are just a few old buildings. As we pass Ocotillo, we've come to a split in the road. On the right side is the original 1916 concrete, and on the left is the improved 1927 route. Neither way goes that far anymore, but we'll start with the 1916 road. Here's an old water catchment along the road. We've reached the end of the concrete, and there's a sign here that used to say, "Who knows what?" This is about where the original location for Miller's Garage was. We'll see what remains of the newer Miller's Garage in just a bit. Al Miller moved out here in the 1920s, and like a lot of early roadside stop owners, he seems like he was something of a character. Miller figured travelers would be pretty thirsty after making it through the desert, so he told people there were springs on the top of that hill. When they'd walk up there, they would find that there were only mattress springs. Miller figured they'd be even thirstier after walking up the hill, so they'd be sure to buy a soda from him when coming back down. When Interstate 8 was built in the 1960s, Miller's Garage was moved to its current location. The road would continue to that railroad bridge in the distance, before going under it, then beginning to head up into the mountains. There are border patrol at that bridge right now, so we're not getting any closer to it today. But let's head back to the 1927 alignment of the road. This is the newer version of Miller's Garage. When the freeway was built, it was moved here to try to stay in business. This building was a cafe that was built in the 1930s, and when Miller's moved here, it was incorporated into the new business. Originally, Highway 80 continued west from here, where Interstate 8 is now, but when the freeway opened, the nearest exit was a couple of miles from here, and that pretty much spelled doom for this place. And the end of Highway 80. So that's our extremely windy look at Highway 80 through the desert. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and we'll see you next week.